It began quietly, like most stories that end in fire. Whispers spread through Ouagadougou's narrow alleys, winding into the capital's chambers. Ibrahim Traoré had announced he might step down. Not tomorrow, but soon. The people listened. And so did those who feared what change might reveal. He was young when he rose, steady when the nation faltered. Under his rule, roads reopened, schools came alive again, and armed men retreated into shadows. But stability often paints over deeper cracks. Beneath his legacy, something was shifting, something no speech could quiet. Traoré had allies. Men and women who pledged loyalty, who praised his plans for a civilian future. Yet loyalty speaks louder when power is certain. Behind the doors of ministries, ambition festered. Some did not want a civilian to lead. Some had waited too long to hold the crown. A name kept surfacing. Captain Abou Diallo. Once Traoré's most trusted field officer. Decorated. Sharp. Quiet. He vanished from the public eye 6 months ago. Some said he'd resigned. Others said he was dead. But the truth was far from either, hidden in cold files no one dared open. Fatou Sangaré, a respected journalist, received an encrypted file. It contained logs of diverted funds, foreign arms purchases, and most disturbing, communications between Diallo and unnamed civilians. She didn't run the story. Not yet. She needed confirmation. Or protection. On the same day, Traoré called for a private meeting. 5 names were summoned. Military, civil, intelligence, media, and business. 1 room. No aides. Just questions. Who would carry the vision forward? No answers came. Only glances. Some calm, some calculating. Meanwhile, in a quiet neighborhood outside Bobo Dioulasso, an ex-intelligence officer named Issa watched the president on television and made a call. 1 sentence, "It's time." Across the city, phones rang. People moved. All had once served under Diallo. None had forgiven. Fatou met secretly with Aminata, a tech analyst at the National Security Bureau. They traced the file to a deleted archive linked to Project Serpent, a classified task force shut down 2 years ago. Its last mission? Eliminate internal threats to Traoré's government. The president's health advisor leaked to a diplomat that Traoré wasn't sleeping. Stress, he claimed. Others said it was fear. Whatever it was, the walls around him grew tighter. And the people outside wondered if their leader still knew who he could trust. Inside the military headquarters, a sealed locker was broken into. Missing, 2 sat phones, encrypted in traceproof. Issa was seen hours later near the northern border. His car abandoned, the phones gone. But a message broadcast anonymously, truth survives silence. Fatou's editor was threatened. 2 masked men, no weapons drawn, only a warning. Stop chasing ghosts. She pressed on. In a copy shop, she found blueprints. Underground storage beneath the palace. Built during Sankara's era. Updated recently. Hidden entries. Aminata accessed a restricted network posing as her superior. She found security logs. One name kept appearing in the early hours, Captain Diallo. The logs were recent. Either Diallo was alive, or someone wanted the world to think he was. Either way, it was no accident. Traoré visited a military hospital at dawn. No press. No aides. Just him and a wounded officer. The visit lasted 20 minutes. No one knows what was said. But the next morning, the officer was flown out of the country. And a colonel was quietly demoted. The streets buzzed. Protests rose, not in anger, but in caution. Students asked for timelines. Farmers wanted fuel guarantees. The youth demanded civilian leadership. None opposed Traoré. But everyone watched. And somewhere, those planning against him counted their days. Fatou's phone was wiped remotely. She lost everything. But Aminata backed up the files on a secure drive. The two met in a parked van outside the National Archives. A single line written on paper: "Someone wants to inherit the storm, not the peace." At an abandoned textile warehouse, a meeting was held. 5 men, faces hidden, coordinates changed every 30 minutes. Issa was one of them. They discussed the transition. Not how to protect it, but how to control it. Control meant legacy. Legacy meant profit. A voice recording surfaced in Fatou's email. A conversation between Diallo and a foreign investor. Words like resource pipeline, private governance, and strategic withdrawal echoed. The date on the file was last week. If Diallo was dead, he spoke from the grave. A confidential military convoy was intercepted. No media coverage. No public knowledge. But whispers leaked. A shipment never reached the gold mines it was sent to guard. And one officer, Lieutenant Gay, was later found floating down the Black Volta. No bullet wounds. Fatou and Aminata met with Traoré under pretense of an interview. He agreed. One camera. One question: "Do you fear what happens after you leave?" He paused. Long enough to say everything. Then smiled. "Only if I pretend I didn't see it coming." A civilian committee was formed to oversee transition. Public support soared. But behind closed doors, resistance brewed. Issa planted a leak, stating the committee was foreign-controlled. Riots broke out in 2 towns. Fear returned. Traoré stayed silent. A letter arrived at Fatou's desk. No stamp. No name. Just a typed message: "The one you trust most is already bought." It was Aminata's handwriting. But the note wasn't from her. They both stared at it, cold realization creeping in. Trust was now a trap. In a remote desert outpost, an encrypted call traced back to Issa was intercepted. The message? Plan B is active. Diallo leads on the 12th. That date was a national holiday. If symbolic leadership was the goal, then spectacle was the weapon. Traoré summoned his closest circle. Fewer than 6 people. He placed the evidence collected by Fatou and Aminata before them. Audio. Maps. Logs. Silence followed. Then one question: "Who do I name?" knowing the wolves already wear sheep's clothing. In the early hours of the 12th, the presidential signal was jammed. Power flickered across Ouagadougou. A convoy moved quietly down a service route. But when it reached the airport hangar, it was empty. Traoré was not inside. He had vanished, again. But from a remote location, he spoke live on national broadcast. Calm, clear, and prepared. If leadership is truly for the people, then let them choose. Not those who seek to steal it in silence. Cameras cut. Phones rang. And those who plotted finally knew they were seen. Inside a dim hotel room, Issa smashed a burner phone. Not out of fear, but because he knew what came next. Exposure wasn't failure, it was evolution. His next move would be public. A press statement. A claim of liberation. Framed as patriotism, fueled by hunger for power. The military remained silent. No tanks in the street. No uniforms outside the barracks. But silence was its own answer. Some waited to see which wind would win. Others had already chosen sides, wearing 2 faces in a city that now trusted none. Fatou was followed home. 3 nights in a row. She never confronted them. She simply changed her route each time, one hand near her recorder, the other near her passport. But home was no longer a place of rest. It was a risk she returned to out of duty. Aminata cracked a data vault tied to the Energy Ministry. What she found was stunning. Offshore accounts, falsified contracts, and a company, Meriden Holdings, linked to Diallo's cousin. It wasn't just power they wanted. It was the entire infrastructure of wealth. On national television, Traoré named a new advisory board. Diverse, young, public-facing. Civilian-led. Their job, prepare elections in 6 months. Applause echoed. But so did gunfire later that night, an attack on a civilian member's car. His child was injured. Issa released a video. Mask off, voice steady. This nation cannot be handed to the unprepared. We built its safety. We preserved its soil. We will lead. It went viral. Some praised him. Others saw through him. But none could ignore him now. A university protest turned violent. Not by students, but by men planted in the crowd. The footage revealed familiar faces from Diallo's last known regiment. Placards were dropped. Smoke rose. The transition hung by a thread no speech could strengthen. Fatou met with Traoré again. No cameras. No microphones. Just a pen and an offer. Name your successor, she said. He paused. I already did, he replied. The problem isn't the name. It's that no one wants to believe it's not theirs. A government server went dark. The team traced the breach to a satellite uplink used during cross-border operations. It wasn't sabotage, it was relocation. Someone was moving the country's digital identity offshore. A backup plan. Or a threat. Traoré's wife, rarely seen, made a public appearance. She visited the hospital that treated the civilian board member's child. Her gesture wasn't political. But it reminded the country of something Diallo and Issa lacked: compassion that wasn't for show. The advisory board revealed their roadmap: decentralized power, economic reforms, press protections. The plan was solid. But rumors spread 2 members were being paid by a foreign embassy. The seed of doubt sprouted again. The streets tensed. Aminata's apartment was ransacked. Nothing taken. Just one thing left: a child's drawing of a snake coiled around a ballot box. She cried for the first time since this began. Not out of fear, but from the weight of being one step ahead and still not safe. The United Nations sent an envoy. Quiet meetings. No press. But their message was clear: stability must be preserved. Yet what they didn't see was the cost of keeping calm. How many voices were silenced so others could speak? Fatou published her report. 30 pages. Verified. Sourced. Meticulously built over months. The headline: Truth Beneath the Sand. It broke records. But also chains. Those who read it saw their future, and those who didn't rushed to break the printer's press. Diallo finally appeared. Live. Unfiltered. I was never gone. I was waiting for the noise to die down. He named himself a stabilizer, a guardian. But behind his calm voice, the plan was clear. He wouldn't wait for democracy. He'd intercept it. Traoré took to the airwaves again. If I vanish tomorrow, let it be known I stood against silence disguised as peace. It was his clearest message yet. Not of resignation, but of resistance. Against those who fought for power, not protection. Issa's safe house was raided. Files taken. Weapons seized. He escaped, barely. But one USB was left behind. It held footage of a meeting between Diallo and 3 corporate executives. The deal: resources in exchange for regime support. It was dated last month. Aminata decrypted a final batch of logs. One entry was written by Traoré himself. Trust fades faster than memory. So let the record remember what trust forgets. She printed it. Folded it. Placed it in her coat. It was a compass in a storm. On the eve of the transition summit, the airport was locked down. Reports of a planned extraction. But no one arrived. The threat was never physical, it was psychological. To rattle, to disturb, to remind the nation of how close the edge really was. Fatou received a final call from an unknown number. A child's voice. Tell them my father is not a soldier. He's a man scared of disappearing. Then the line went dead. She recorded it. Not for news. For the future. For when someone asked, "Why did you stay?" Traoré stepped onto the stage. No grand army. No armored car. Just him, a single mic, and the advisory board behind him. This nation was never mine to keep, he said. It was mine to guard. Until it could walk on its own. The crowd roared. Some in grief. Some in joy. Some in stunned silence. Because the truth was now undeniable, Burkina Faso was moving forward. Not without wounds. Not without cost. But forward, because fear could no longer hold the steering wheel. Issa was arrested near the border. No resistance. Just a tired nod. His final words to the officer, "Tell Traoré I underestimated him. And thank him for finishing what we started." Diallo vanished again. But this time, there was no plan to chase him. The people were no longer listening for ghosts. They were voting. Organizing. Speaking in a voice that no bullet could silence. As the sun rose over Ouagadougou, Fatou filed her last entry. Today, the silence is different. Not fearful. Not forced. Just full. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from power. It comes from finally believing you deserve it.